All right, y'all, what was going on in your life from 2013 to 2014? Now, this is kind of a fun question because Jupiter, the planet of luck, expansion, growth, wisdom, is moving into Cancer next week. And Cancer is one of the signs, also, the moon is associated with memory. So, looking back to 2013 to 2014, the last time that Jupiter was here, can give us a little bit of an idea of themes we might experience. Now, if you have Cancer or cardinal sign placements, Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, certainly pay attention, but also just pay attention because everyone has Cancer somewhere in their chart, and Jupiter is the great benefic. Not only that, but Jupiter is actually exalted in the sign of Cancer, meaning it does very well in the sign of Cancer. It's at its planetary joy, so to speak. Now, also keep in mind that Jupiter is in detriment in the sign of Gemini, where it currently is and has been for the past year. So we're going from Jupiter being debilitated in the sign of Gemini because it's ruled by planet Mercury, the mind, communication, thoughts, and we're moving into a place where Jupiter does very well. Now, as we mentioned, Jupiter is the great benefic. It's expansion, it's wisdom, it's luck, it's benefic energy, it's good, positive energy for the most part. Now, there is a caveat to this because Jupiter can expand anything it touches. So if you have difficult placements there or difficult things going on in your chart in that particular area, this can inflate those things as well. You have to take the entirety of your chart into context. But that being said, Jupiter is usually a more positive influence in the chart, and it's going to be even more so positive in Cancer. Now, let's think about Cancer for a second. Cancer is the fourth sign of the zodiac, the first water sign. It's cardinal water, and it's associated with things like our home, roots, family, our emotions, our ancestral ties, our lineage, our security, our nurturing abilities, caring for others, the home, food, safety, protection, memory. So Jupiter's influence here is really expanding our ability to emotionally connect with ourselves, intuitively connect with ourselves and our intuition, our psychic abilities, and be able to get to the root of things. So looking deep within ourselves, focusing on our home, our family, parenting. You know, Cancer is connected to the mother archetype or the divine feminine, nurturing, caring for. Now, as I mentioned, just because Jupiter is exalted in Cancer and just because Jupiter is the great benefic doesn't necessarily mean there's no caveats to this. As Jupiter moves into Cancer, 0 degrees Cancer, we know that Saturn just moved into Aries. They're both cardinal signs. What does that mean? They're going to be in a square, which is a tense, difficult, challenging aspect to deal with, and this is happening on a collective scale. So there can be a little bit of resistance and difficulty experiencing or allowing ourselves to experience the positive aspects of this transit as we're moving into it. You know, we talked about Cancer being connected to memory. So I could see this as being, you know, very much connected to our past, our childhood, or things that are stirring up emotional ties or even emotional baggage that almost need to be looked at and purged to allow us into that expansive Jupiterian energy. This is also teaching us a lot about our emotional security and teaching us that growth can only happen when our environment, our physical environment, feels safe. That's when our internal environment can flourish and expand. I think this transit has a lot of potential to bring a lot of emotional healing and emotional depth that was definitely missing for the past year with Jupiter and Gemini. With Jupiter and Gemini, you know, that was a more difficult transit, although we might not necessarily feel that. It was really teaching us about the power of limitations to the mind, and now we're moving into our emotion and our feeling and our intuition and our connection with family, the earth, our close connections, our roots, our security, our stability. This can also be a lot about like generosity, hospitality, you know, serving others in a way, although I don't really like to use that term. But two signs that I associate with like generosity and hospitality are Cancer and Leo, the masculine and the feminine of the zodiac. So that just comes to mind for me. This can bring about ancestral healing, you know, expansion in our family line. It can be introducing emotional intelligence. Now that we've learned the difficulties of Jupiter and Gemini, now we're able to move that into an emotional front. So we're able to integrate that intelligence into the emotional aspect of things. and we're able to bring in Jupiter's abundance. We're able to bring in abundance through the root. So not necessarily in material goods, although it could be, of course. Look to see what's going on in your chart. But abundance is more than just money or wealth. It is definitely a state of being. It's a frequency that you have to align yourself with, and that starts internally at the root and at your base. Cancer and Leo are also two signs that I associate with being like very protective, and I think that's just because, you know, Cancer is the divine feminine, Leo is the divine masculine, and there can be a fine line between nurturing and smothering. So I think that that could be a shadow quality of this transit. Like, under the facade of protection, are you really being overbearing or, you know, overly protective and not allowing a sense of freedom in whatever context this resonates? There can also be this sense of like emotional overindulgence or indulging in things out of an emotional place. So overeating, spending money. We know in today's economy, a lot of people, just from like demographics wise, like especially people in the millennial and Gen X generation, more so millennials and Gen Zers actually, they spend very emotionally. They spend their money emotionally, so that could be a downfall of this transit, or just doing things for comfort from an emotional place when you're not thinking of the repercussions it could cause long term. So that could potentially be another challenge and another lesson that Saturn square to Jupiter is trying to teach us as well. You know, opting for the safer route as opposed to what will potentially help us grow long term is something we need to look at in that context. And you know, there is also like this fear of loss or clinging to home traditions or like idealization of family or family lines or lineage, like overlooking blind spots or toxic patterns within family dynamics, not setting boundaries. These are all things that could potentially lead to more problems or lessons if you learn the lesson correctly. My hair clip was bugging the crap out of me, guys. But now when we're looking at this from more of a collective standpoint, not so much on a personal level, Jupiter in Cancer usually brings an energy of focus on national identity. Don't forget that the United States of America is a Cancer sun. But this can also bring up themes to do with like homeland security or financial or housing markets or housing issues. So we could see a fall in the housing market or potentially a rise in the housing market because, you know, Jupiter is the great benefic. Although with that square to Saturn, it's hard to tell. I would have to look at this from the US's charts perspective. I can do another video on that if you guys are interested in that type of thing. But yes, things to do with the housing market. It can also bring up themes of, you know, wanting to expand on like family oriented things such as like welfare or any family oriented policies, right? It can also bring about like this idea of wanting to preserve tradition in a sense. Cancer and Capricorn, which are polarities, both are signs that have to do with tradition, traditional ways of doing things. So there's this want or need or nostalgia for those things to either bring them back or to keep them around. I don't know, guys, but I'm really looking forward to this transit of Jupiter in Cancer. It will be for literally almost a full year. So it's going to be Jupiter in its exalted position, and we are going into Cancer season here shortly with the summer solstice. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, guys. If you like videos like this, leave me a comment down below. Personal readings up at the link in my bio. And much love.